Hey guys, today I want to talk to you about all the little distractions and diversions and things that I have been making kind of to avoid finishing knitting that second sleeve of my sweater. Hey there, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Felicia from SweetGeorgia, and this is Taking Back Friday. This is a space where we come every Friday and we talk about something to do with the fiber arts, whether it's knitting or spinning or weaving or dyeing. I have been doing many other things besides knitting the second sleeve of my stranded colorwork sweater. This sweater, it's coming along, everything's gonna be fine. I'm knitting the sleeve. I just want something else to do. And so there's been a couple of things that I have been recently distracted by. I think a lot of it is because I feel like I've been learning so much new stuff this year, so many new things this year. And I'm very lucky because I get to be here with the filming of the classes that we do for the School of SweetGeorgia. And so I get to see all the instructors as they come through. I get to see all their excitement about the things that they create and the things that they work on, the things that they like to teach. And so I have been sucked in to many of the things that they have been teaching us. And I'm going to show you a little bit about what I've been doing. So the first thing is that we've had a number of spinning teachers come through the studio this past year. And in the past couple of months, I've learned so much to improve my own spinning technique and my own spinning skill. And so this is kind of where I've been going. So you can see my giant bobbin. This is my giant Ashford bobbin. It should theoretically hold 8 ounces of fiber. And so on this bobbin, I just was spinning singles, and I just kept spinning, and I managed to spin something like 4 different skeins worth of yarn onto one bobbin. And then I took the bobbin and I wound off all the singles onto sectional weaving bobbins, like storage bobbins, and then I've been plying them together. So I've managed to ply together 2 of the skeins. They're on here, but I have to remove these skeins because there's more singles underneath that I couldn't access. And so this is kind of what my spinning has become. I just try to spin as much as I can to a single bobbin in terms of singles. Then I separate out all those singles into separate storage bobbins. Then I ply the ones that need to go together, and plying them again all together onto one giant bobbin without sort of switching bobbins or anything like that. Just saves me time switching bobbins, and I just keep going. But I feel like the things that I've learned in the past couple of months have made my spinning much better, much softer. We have right now a class going on with Rachel Smith from Welford Pearls. She also does the woolen spinning community. And so she's been teaching a sheep breed class on our School of SweetGeorgia. So I have a collection of fibers at home that I've been sort of spinning through. I've spun some of the Gotland, I've spun some Shetland, just playing with those fibers, feeling what the texture is like, seeing how they could be spun. But with all that spinning, I've recently sort of moved towards a technique where I'm just spinning a backwards worsted draft. Backwards worsted draft. It's different from forwards worsted draft. So this is something that I'm practicing, working on, but it has already really improved my yarn. I'm really quite happy with it. And then we also had Kim McKenna come through the studio a couple weeks ago, and she teaches the applying through the rings technique. So I've been, doing a really good job with my applying setup, and then just trying to make everything as consistent as possible. I'm going to have much more to say about spinning in these yarns, maybe after these come off and after they have been washed and finished and all that kind of stuff. But every evening when I don't feel like doing any knitting, when I'm trying to avoid the knitting, I just sit down with my e-spinner, and I've been spinning for probably about an hour or 2 every night. And I feel like I'm getting better, finally. So the other thing that has been keeping me a little bit busy is that I started a new project because, getting through the second sleeve, I'm getting there, I'm getting to the finish line. And so I needed something else to start. And so I decided I wanted to start this crochet shrug that I found online. It's by Rove Handmade. I'll show you a picture of what it's supposed to look like. I think it's exactly the kind of thing that I want to wear all the time, just kind of like a cover up, big, long, slouchy shrug kind of thing. And so it is one big, giant granny square. That's that's pretty much what it is. And so I even made a little gauge swatch. So this is my gauge swatch for the granny square shrug. I went to a play date where I was talking with the other moms while I was making this. And so I did make a mistake. I ended up adding a corner where there's not supposed to be a corner. I might have, oh yeah. Yeah, see? It's supposed to be 4 corners. And then I somehow managed to make this into an extra corner. So there's some odd stuff happening there. I just have to undo that part. But that didn't matter because the whole point of the gauge swatch is just for me to measure the inside and measure this 6 rounds around. That's all I had to measure. So that's the point of that gauge swatch. But I have started working on the full thing. And so this is the whole thing. It's coming together. So the idea is that So the idea is that you crochet a giant granny square. You just keep going and going and going. You can see here's my loop where my crochet hook has fallen out. But you just keep making this giant square, and eventually it will be in a way where you can fold 2 of the sides together, sew them together, and it will become this shrug. That's the idea. So I think I have to make this, this has to get significantly bigger, but this colorway is called Evening. You can see how it works up in crochet. And so the yarn that I'm using here, this is the Mohair Silk DK. It's got a little bit of superwash wool in it. It has silk, a little bit of nylon, and it has mohair. And the mohair is not fuzzy or anything like that. It makes it shiny, like a little bit shiny, a little bit glossy. So this is one of my favorite yarns. I use it sort of as a heavy DK light worsted kind of yarn. And you can use it for anything. I love it for sweaters, all sorts of stuff like that. And when you work it with this loose gauge, it produces quite a drapey fabric. So the thing that's neat about crochet is that you can cover so much ground so quickly with this technique. I think I managed to do this much of the square in one evening, and as it gets a bigger and bigger circumference, obviously you're gonna do fewer and fewer rounds at a time in each session. But yeah, it works up very, very quickly, and it's very, very satisfying. I think it just works up quickly because of all these holes and things like that. So what I was going to do is I'm eventually going to put together a quick little tutorial showing you how to actually work a granny square. It's very simple, but yeah, I thought that could be really, really fun to do. And as well, for the School of Sweet Georgia, we have Charlotte at the studio, who has been a long, long time crocheter. She came to us as a crocheter before she did knitting here. And she's going to be teaching a class later on this fall for the School of Sweet Georgia. And it's going to be about crochet. And it's going to be crocheting the shawl that she designed for holiday for last year. So let me introduce you to my latest distraction. And you might have seen that on the School of Sweet Georgia, we recently released the Modern Punch Needle class with Sam Jalbert from Cousin and Kiss. So punch needle is actually something that I attempted many years ago. I remember precisely the day that I ordered my Amy Oxford number 10 punch needle. And it was basically about 15 minutes before I did the recording with Andrea Rangel from Andrea Rangel Knits for the Sweet Georgia podcast. I remember getting on that podcast with her and saying, I just bought a punch needle. I don't know what to do with it. And so within a few days of ordering that, I got the punch needle. I bought the cloth that you're supposed to use for punch needle. This is a monk's cloth. I got that. Got everything set, but I was using a regular embroidery hoop. So I got myself a regular embroidery hoop from the craft store, something that was not too expensive. I think these are $1.99 there or something like that. And I tried to do punch needle from, a couple of YouTube videos that I tried to find. It was not as easy as I thought. And so my first attempts at punch needle were terrible. I couldn't figure out how the stitches could stay in. Every time I pulled the punch needle, yarn would come out. I didn't know which direction to hold the needle. So if you've never seen it, this is the number 10 Amy Oxford punch needle. You can see there's a hole, there's a little channel where your yarn goes. And I didn't know, do you hold it up? Do you hold it down? Which way do you punch? I just couldn't figure it out. And so it sat in a bag for a long, long time until Leah had this idea that, hey, we should invite Sam to come and teach this punch needle class. And I was like, okay. And so you can see these are my very first experiments with punch needle. The one here is pre-Sam, before learning from Sam. And you can see this whole gap where I've pulled things out. This is just me teaching my son how rugs work and why we shouldn't pick at the yarn that's coming out of the rug, because basically like this will happen and you will be able to just completely undo your rug. It all just comes out. So that was try one. After watching Sam teach this class and filming it with her and everything like that, I went home and I practiced again, and I managed to do this section here. And I managed to figure out, you know, the different textures. There's a flat stitch, there's a bumpy stitch, you can have different sides, you can mix colors and hold different yarns together. I happened to do this with the Harrisville Highland that I had at home because I was using that for my crochet weaving. And it was just yarn that was lying around, so I just popped that in there and just to see what happened. And from there, I started to move on and do some other projects. So this one is one of the projects that has come out of her course, and it's about making coasters. And so in that course, she teaches two projects. One of them is a round circle with embroidery hoop sort of example. The second project is a set of coasters. And so her set of coasters are really cool. They all line up, they match. It's almost like a little bit of a puzzle. And then you can break them apart and they're all like different, but they're together. It's quite nice. And so what I started to do was I use a whole bunch of yarn that I have dyed as samples. These are all my color dyeing triangle dyeing samples. And as you can see, this is one of the things that I advocate when I'm teaching dyeing, is that I don't make a whole bunch of mini skeins because nobody has time to make a million mini skeins. What I do is I actually take a skein of yarn, like a whole skein of yarn, and I just cut right through the middle and then create a whole bunch of strands. So you might end up with, I don't know, 50 to 100 strands of yarn. And so I will take bundles of strands and dye them as a group. But then at the end of the day, after making all of these color samples so I can see the color, all I have is these strands of yarn. So here's 2 strands of yarn that are about this big. So this one happens to be the Superwash Chunky. So it's a chunkier weight yarn. It's a Superwash Merino. We don't make this yarn anymore. That's why I used it for dye samples. But just, you know, if you have random lengths of string that you don't have anything to do with anymore, they're perfect for punch needle. You just thread your punch needle, thread it through the channel, and then you just punch until you've run out of this yarn. And you can make quite a little chunk of color in this coaster. So my coaster is thicker than the one in the project shown in the school because I'm using a thicker yarn. She's using worsted, I'm using a bulky. So theoretically, I should adjust my technique so I don't punch so close to the holes. Like I don't punch the holes too close to each other so that I can spread it out a bit. But you can see that is my very first coaster. And Sam teaches all the techniques for, like, basically this little coaster is like a little tiny mini rug. So all the techniques that you would go towards finishing a proper punch needle rug, you could do with this little coaster. So you like make the little hem and you fold these edges down and you sew them down. You do what you need to finish this little piece. And she shows you all these techniques. And then I've made basically a tiny little mini rug. Ta-da! I mean, you could make this bigger. It could become a pillow top. It could become all sorts of things. And so in that course, I was very excited to see all the different ways that Sam used to hold the fabric in place so that it's really super taut. And she explained to me that one of the challenges I had when I started was I was using this embroidery hoop and the fabric kept slipping out of the rings. Like it wasn't taut, it wasn't tight enough. And so there's not enough tension on that fabric. And so there's lots of things that she suggested that you could do with something like this to still make it work. But she turned me on to this no slip ring. And so this is what I'm using right now. I have this no slip ring. We have a number 10 Oxford punch needle. And then I also have a number 14, which is a slightly finer gauge for using finer yarns like fingering weight yarns, using sock yarns. I have tons of sock yarn that I could be putting into a punch needle project. And so this is the very beginning of my next coaster. You can see I've drawn my little picture on here, and I'm going to be using a bunch of different colors here. So I have all these colors. I'm going to use ginger color here, and then I'm going to mix some blue in it. I'm going to mix some purple in it, and just make a whole series of really fun, colorful mini rug coaster kinds of things. So that is the project that I have been working on. And so if you check out what Sam has made, check out her Instagram account, Kusin and Kiss. It is so beautiful. The things that she's made, the things that she's designed. She sells a number of her patterns, like the designs, the graphic patterns, on her Etsy store. So you can check those out there if you want to make a similar kind of pillow and things like that. And I think that that's the interesting thing about this modern punch needle technique, is that there's a lot of play, there's a lot of experimentation, trying different textures, trying different yarns, mixing different things. And I just love that you can use tiny little scraps of yarn. You could punch with almost anything. And so she's talking about how like anything that flows through this punch needle, you can use. Lots of different ways that you can play with something like this. Very, very simple and so addictive. You might also follow Leah. Leah's Instagram account is the Crafty Colon, and so she has shown a bunch of different things that she's made as well from the punch needle information. She made a whole set of coasters as well. I think it's become extremely addictive. Many of the girls here at the team did end up going home with punch needles and the frames that day. So that is basically it for today. I basically still working on this punch needle project. I love how just having a bit of information, a bit of guidance, a bit of knowledge about how this all works, why the yarn stays in, like how to make this functional, how to finish it, all of that kind of stuff. It's given me a lot more confidence to go ahead and do more projects like this. And I love that you can just make things with scraps now. So nothing is ever wasted. If you're doing a lot of dyeing, you're doing a lot of experimentation with different yarns and trying different colors, nothing has to go to waste because you can use all that in another project. So I would love to hear from you if you've tried any punch needle, how your experience has gone. I know that my experience started off pretty rough, but now I feel really good about it and really excited to try different graphic patterns and things like that. So I would love to hear about what your experience has been. You can share your projects with me. Send me your Instagram links to things that you want me to see about punch needle, because I am still learning and exploring this whole world as well. And I would love to learn more about it. Thank you guys so much for being here today. If you're interested in learning about the SOS course for Sam's punch needle class, you can go to schoolofsweetgeorgia.com and look for Modern Punch Needle. It's one of the latest classes that we have launched. So that's it. If you guys like this episode, please do hit the like button. And if you would like to see more content like this, please do hit subscribe. We come here almost every Friday to talk about something to do with color and craft and things that make us happy. So I will see you guys in the next one. All right, bye for now.